But I would actually say I think the biggest opportunity is going to be when AI leads to a new type of creator and new ways of doing things, right? When you look at the internet, it changed who got to create and who got to contribute to visual storytelling. Long before AI entered the picture, we saw the shift in how music was made from recording live bands in a studio to now producers generate full tracks in a computer. I mean, most of the top hits you would listen to today were generated in a computer, right? So I think that is the biggest opportunity. It's still up for grabs in how we actually create and distribute and share and what we consider to be art in the age of AI.
The Amber Mack Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Welcome to the Amber Mack Show. This week I chat with futurist Sinead Bovell about Canada's role in the AI race and what humans need to do to adapt in this age of innovation. We also explain why Bill Gates is lashing out at Elon Musk for, and I quote, killing the world's poorest children, and lots more. Jeff, how was your week?
Well, aside from some mind-bogglingly annoying Google tech support frustrations, it's been pretty good. I've been enjoying the spring sunshine and warmth, so not too much to complain about.
And I know in the other Mac that you are going to chat about a subject that I can't wait to hear more about, and that is why we shouldn't trust Mark Zuckerberg to build us AI friends.
I sure am. But first, let's talk some tech headlines.
News feed.
In the face of the Trump administration's dramatic cuts to health and foreign aid, Microsoft co-founder and philanthropist Bill Gates has announced that he will donate 99% of his $107 billion fortune to the Gates Foundation to spend within the next 20 years. In an interview with the Financial Times, Gates commented on Musk's Doge intervention to try to shut down USAID, saying, "The picture of the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children is not a pretty one."
It sure isn't. I totally agree with them. And another great quote from that interview is, "People will say a lot of things about me when I die, but I am determined that he died rich will not be one of them." And it just amazes me, really, at 70 years old, Gates, who was not my favorite person in the 20th century, has done so much in the last 25 years to improve his reputation by kind of showing what a billionaire can do with their money and actually affect important change. So the Gates Foundation has already spent over $100 billion to combat deadly infectious diseases like polio and malaria, improve infant and maternal health, and reduce poverty, amongst other things. So I think he's doing a fantastic job on that front.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think it's one of those things where we probably should give him even more credit, right? Especially as we've seen that evolution. He also said that cuts to USAID, if not reversed, could be responsible for an additional 2 million childhood deaths in the next 5 years, which is so tragic, and a really terrible cost to pay for Doge's attacks on government aid to the world's neediest people.
Absolutely. And just disturbing. But as we talk about almost every week, that seems to be par for the course for Musk and Doge and those. But taking the news a little closer to home, we've got new rules on tipping and price displays that recently took effect in the Canadian province of Quebec. And among other things, tips must now be calculated before taxes are applied instead of calculating them after taxes, which seems to have become the norm, even though it wasn't historically. And tipping options must be neutral and uniform. So you can't highlight recommended choices to try to get people to tip more, and you have to include an option for no tip and some stuff like that.
All of this makes a lot of sense, and I think it's fair to say that tipping has been a big topic of discussion, especially recently. There are also some rumors that Ontario may adopt some of these measures that we're seeing in the province of Quebec, and there are also some additional rules around an item ringing in at the wrong price, where a merchant would have to give up to a $15 discount, as well as requirements that food products must be labeled to clearly specify whether the item is taxable, among other things. And I think the most important word here, and I've heard you say this before, Jeff, is transparency is key throughout this process for consumers.
Absolutely. You should know. It's weird to have to guess whether something's going to be taxed at the checkout, and there's some times confusing pricing put where it's like, oh, if you're a member of our store club, it's this, but it's not clear what it'll be if you're not. So I think these are all moves in the right direction. Shifting back stateside, in other news, while testifying at Google's antitrust trial, Apple's senior VP of services, Eddie Q, said that the number of Google searches made on Apple's Safari browser decreased for the first time ever. and that Apple was actively looking at adding AI search options to the browser at some point in the future, as he believes that AI search engines will eventually replace traditional search engines like Google.
Well, just want to note that both of these companies' share prices fell after this news. And if you want to learn more about AI search, Jeff, you did a really good segment on that topic a few weeks ago that people can check out on our YouTube channel. It's also going to be really interesting to see what executives at Microsoft, OpenAI, and Yahoo, among others, will be saying when they take the stand.
It sure is. And just a little additional context for those who might not be aware of this. Google pays Apple around $20 billion per year, 20 billion US dollars per year to have Google as the default search engine in Safari. So there is a lot at stake for both companies here. I don't think this is Apple trying to take Google down or anything like that. But like you say, it'll be interesting to see what comes out when these other executives take the stand, because this is some really interesting stuff seeing behind the scenes here.
And speaking of antitrust trials, we know that Instagram's boss shared on the stand that Meta had considered incorporating what is now the Threads app as simply an additional feature within Instagram. This makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it helps them make their case that it's not a monopoly, especially given the fact that you need an Instagram account to use the Threads app, and your profiles are both linked to one another. So it's a little bit strange, but honestly, it's very weird to have text posts mixed in with predominantly image and video posts like an Instagram feed. Although I kind of feel like Instagram is so ridiculously discombobulated in so many ways with all the different types of content they have and the different places to get them and the stories and all of this stuff that almost nothing they did with that app would surprise me in any case.
Yeah.
That's why I don't use it.
Yeah, and Jeff, if we think about any of the social apps that you do use, I do want to make a note that I believe you are a Pinterest fan.
Yes, I quite like Pinterest. Professional photos by professionals mostly, some good memes and all that sort of stuff, and no pretense that you need to be commenting on this stuff. So I just find it a more comfortable place for me. They've got amazing AI functionality in there, and yeah, it's super, super handy in a way that I find Instagram to just not be quite for me.
Well, you will be excited to hear that I've actually booked the Pinterest CTO to come on the show in a few weeks. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we mentioned OpenAI a little bit earlier. Their CEO, Sam Altman, recently became a father. And when he was giving Senate testimony last week, and he was asked if he would want his kids to be best friends with an AI bot, he said something that I think we should all be grateful for. And I'm quoting him here: I do not.
Yes, I do not is the right answer, I think. And I'm going to be talking about this in the Other Mac segment after we finish the news here. But the discussion on the stand was around protecting children from harm in an AI world, something that we just talked about last week. And Altman noted, quote, "These AI systems will get to know you over the course of your life so well, and that presents a new challenge and a level of importance for how we think about privacy in the world of AI, and that children should have a much higher level of protection than adults do when using AI tools."
Yeah, I don't think you want your child's best friend to be an AI bot.
I do not.
So what can we do? How can we work together to protect children?
We've talked a lot about some of the things we're doing here. We're trying to learn the lessons of previous generation, and that's kind of the way it goes. People make mistakes and you do it better next time. One thing we say a lot internally is we want to treat our adult users like adults. We want to give them a lot of flexibility. We want to let them use the service with a lot of freedom. And for children, there needs to be a much higher level of protection, which means the service won't do things that they might want. Now, we're still early, so sometimes people say, oh, you're being too strict on the rules, and it's just we can't perfectly tell this. But if we could draw a line, and if we knew for sure when a user was a child or an adult, we would allow adults to be much more permissive, and we'd have tighter rules for children.
We certainly agree on this, and I know, Jeff, in a future segment, you're going to talk about how we can determine the age of users online, because there are some ways to do that. But for now,
it's trickier than you'd think.
Yes, it is trickier than you think, and I think we have to get to that point where it is possible. But I'm confident we might. For now, let's hear your thoughts on Mark Zuckerberg's AI friends proposition.
The Other Mac.
Mark Zuckerberg said recently, and I quote, "The average American, I think, it's fewer than 3 friends, 3 people they'd consider friends, and the average person has demand for meaningfully more. I think it's like 15 friends." Well, thankfully, Zuck is going to solve this problem for us. Not by doing anything about how divisive and purposely addictive his own social media platforms are. No. But by gifting us all with Meta AI friends. Now, we've talked a lot about AI replacing workers across different industries, and there's definitely an argument to be made to call that progress if we can figure out how, as a society, to handle the resulting employment disruptions. But I think we should all draw the line at AI friends. Good friends provide their own perspective, their own insights that no algorithm is going to deliver. Plus, good friends can be there for you, and I mean physically there for you. Humans are wired to give other humans special considerations in many ways, like being able to quickly recognize a human face or the way somebody walks. And while future robotics may be able to conquer some of these physical hurdles, we're a lifetime away from them not being detectable by your average human being, if that ever happens at all. In fact, I abandoned my initial master's thesis on virtual worlds because there are aspects that immersion cannot easily overcome. And look, we're 3 years past Zuckerberg's declaration that people would flock to his metaverse that he built so they could use his augmented reality glasses to live a better life, I guess. How did that work out? Anyway, let's leave the importance of physical presence to most friendships behind, but it absolutely is a hurdle. So how would Zuck make sure these AI friends could fulfill their other responsibilities? Well, he's explained that this would require, quote, "a deep understanding of what's going on in this person's life." And I mean, you can kind of see where this is going, right? More data for Mark. On top of that, the Wall Street Journal recently reported that, and I quote again, "Inside Meta, staffers across multiple departments have raised concerns that the company's rush to popularize these AI bots may have crossed ethical lines, including by quietly endowing AI personas with the capacity for fantasy sex." And they also warned that the company wasn't protecting underage users from such sexually explicit discussions. So we talked last week about online dangers for kids, so definitely check that out, and it's right up the alley here. But let's just say that billionaire tech bros ignoring very real risks to their users in the name of progress, or should I more correctly say in the name of profit, is getting to be a pretty reliable prediction. So in short, the guy who took an app to rate how hot college students were and turned it into the largest social media network on the planet, which used algorithms to addict people to its use, which in turn has played a major role in making the modern West as divided and angry as it is today. The guy who used the personal data people provided on those networks to make himself one of the richest people in history, and who has time and time again tried to hide the data his own company has gathered on the harms it causes. He wants you to trust him when he says he's got an AI solution for the breakdown of the personal relationships that his own previous creation facilitated. He'll just need a little bit more of your data, please. Well, friendship's too important to leave in the hands of people so rich that they're probably a bit skeptical of some of their own friendships. So do your part to stop this madness. Go have a coffee with somebody you recently met. Share a walk with somebody through the park on a sunny day, reach out to a friend you haven't talked to in a while, or head out to a social event to make new friends. And if you find yourself in Halifax, Nova Scotia, then reach out to me, Jeff MacArthur, for a patio beer. I'm the other Mac. Stay friendly out there.
Thanks, Jeff. Coming up next, I chat with one of the world's top futurists about how Canada can play a leading role in today's AI race.
The Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Sinead Bovell is a futurist and the founder of tech education company Way. Amber spoke with Sinead at the Departure Festival and Conference in Toronto. Here's their conversation on what role humans play in an AI world and how Canada can lead the way.
AI Spotlight.
All right, so I wanted to start with talking about generative AI because I'm sure for a lot of people who are in the room today who work in creative industries, they might be using generative AI in interesting ways, but also maybe they should be aware of some of the risks. So let's talk about the opportunities to get started. What are some of the possibilities with generative AI?
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to kick it off. I'd say, technology is the story of things getting cheaper. And as things get cheaper, new and different voices get to participate. So if the only advantage, for instance, is a movie for a big movie studio or a huge record label is their access to capital, then that advantage is slowly going to be eroded over time when AI makes several aspects of the value chain a lot cheaper and a lot more accessible. But I would actually say I think the biggest opportunity is going to be when AI leads to a new type of creator and new ways of doing things, right? When you look at the internet, it changed who got to create and who got to contribute to visual storytelling. Long before AI entered the picture, we saw the shift in how music was made from recording live bands in a studio to now producers generate full tracks in a computer. I mean, most of the top hits you would listen to today were generated in a computer, right? So I think that is the biggest opportunity. It's still up for grabs in how we actually create and distribute and share and what we consider to be art in the age of AI.
I love that you brought up the price point because I think that is something that a lot of people perhaps don't speak enough about. And I'm sure for people in the room who think back, I'm talking 15, 20 years ago, if you wanted to create a TV show, if you wanted to design a magazine, I mean, the software and the hardware that you would use would be so expensive that it would take massive teams and hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases to bring that together. So when you think about the fact that all of this is now at our fingertips and we're at this kind of tipping point of excitement in terms of the opportunities that are in front of us, for people who are wondering, how is it going to change the way that I work and how can I work alongside this technology without having it replace me? What would you say to them?
Yeah, and it's a really great question. It's a general purpose technology. So like the internet and so like electricity, it's going to change everyone's jobs. We'll be building alongside it, but also on top of it. And I think that that's a key thing to understand with AI. The same way you build on the internet, you'll build on AI as a new kind of distribution platform. But I think the best thing we can do is to embrace the uncertainty and lean in and start to learn how to work with these tools because the pain points in your job the best. So if you're an artist, you know that maybe you love what you do, you hate writing the marketing copy, but you have to do that to get your work out there. Or you hate participating on social media, but you have to create and share some of what you do. So these are all of the ways you can apply AI to any of the pain points in your work, but you have to be kind of sampling and trying and leaning into these tools to know that to begin with. And I'd say the good thing about generative AI compared to other technologies is that the interface is language. That is right. And so that is something that we are most of us quite naturally adept in is our own speaking language. So it's much easier to talk to an AI system than it would have been to surf the internet for the first time, whatever that would have meant to people.
Now, I'm thinking there's some people who are wondering, should I be using AI? Where should I start? And I think it's also fair to say, and you certainly probably run across people in your speaking and your advising, and in the world today, I mean, the top leaders of all industries are already using AI, right? Like there's no sort of closing the barn door on what's happening right now. So do you think it's a question of should I embrace it or not? Or yes, everybody in the creative industry should embrace AI in one way or another because that is just going to be the future of how we create?
Yeah, I think two things can be true. So I do think AI it's a foundational technology. It is not going away. The way we stream electricity and you walk into your hotel room and you assume you can plug in your phone, we will stream AI. That is what general purpose technologies do. They're foundational. So there is no unsubscribing, right? It's akin to unsubscribing from the vehicle. It's just not really an option. But it can also be true that we aren't entirely content with the process of how these models have been built and whose voices kind of got sidelined in the making. So I think both are true. And I actually think what can be more dangerous is if we become we get frustrated to the point where we unsubscribe and don't share how things could be better. And I think that is the worst thing we can do in these moments is kind of just sit back and say, I don't like it, I don't agree with it, so I'm therefore not going to try to shape it.
So let's dive into that a little bit, because when we think about generative AI, the reality is that a lot of the different tools that people may be using, those models were trained on data that is available on the internet, that it's not like permission was asked to each of these individual creators. So how do you overcome that situation, or how do we work towards a more ethical framework for generative AI?
Yeah, and it's a tricky one because I think the argument that AI companies make is that if you train data or your models on publicly available data, and if you've posted something on the internet that counts as publicly available data, then that qualifies as fair use under copyright law. And so they see it as similar to how a student might study thousands of books to learn a language. That's what they're claiming is happening. And of course, many artists, many rights holders are pushing back to say this is actually extraction, right? You're using somebody's work without their permission or their credit. And I would actually agree with that. I don't think art and creation of any kind thrives when people feel exploited in the making of it. I think that actually goes right, against inspiration. But I do think we have to update our copyright laws. So right now, there's a lot of cases that have been litigated, and I'm glad that's happening. But we are applying a framework from 200 years ago or 150 years ago to a technology, to a transformative technology that is going to change so much about how we live and so much about the future. It just doesn't apply. And by not innovating our regulatory markets, you provide loopholes for companies to just kind of scrape around. And so I don't think it's sufficient that we just litigate with the current copyright laws. I think that is going to set creators up to fail. Copyright laws have to innovate because, AI, and it is some give and pull. So maybe it's like we give credit or we figure out a way to have some economic incentive. But whatever we land on, it's not going to come out of the current copyright laws. So I think, and that's part of the moment we're in. Everyone's role changes. How we regulate changes. Everything is required to innovate in this moment.
So let's talk about regulation. I saw you on the social a couple of months ago where you were talking about what regulation exists in Canada, and it will be very easy to explain this because there is basically none, and we are in early days in terms of what's happening here. So when you think about regulation, there are some parts of the world who are a little bit further ahead when it comes to regulation around AI. Who do you think is doing it well, and what can Canada learn from them?
I don't know if there is one place that is just kind of soaring through. I think everybody is making it up as they go. And I think it's no surprise that every day we wake up and it feels like the frontier is changing. So I don't know if there's a country. I think everyone's trying to figure out what makes the most sense for their model. I do think, and it's going to be probably somewhere for Canada, somewhere between what Europe has done and what the US probably won't do. I think somewhere in that spectrum would be a safe place for Canada to land. And so contrary to, popular belief, or, I talk a lot about safety and regulation, I actually don't think it's a bad thing that Canada has not executed on regulation yet. I think we could, it's been helpful to see what Europe has done and what hasn't necessarily worked, and how it kind of got ahead of innovation. And it's helpful to see, what the US isn't doing and kind of where they're bulldozing ahead. So I think now is probably the perfect moment. And that, a blanket approach isn't also going to work. It's going to have to be adaptive, much more akin to what the Montreal Protocol was. But yeah, I don't think that there's a place that's doing it right, because it's also going to have to continue to be malleable. This is a very different technology that we're working with.
I was just at an event last night, and one of the people on the panel said that good regulation is the mother of innovation. And I really loved that saying, because I think regulation can help us here in Canada sort of put some type of guardrails in place so people understand that, hey, we're watching out for how these different AI models are being used in the country. We're protecting Canadians. So as we move along, how quickly do we need to figure some of this out?
We probably do need to figure it out quickly, because it's also for businesses, right? People don't want to deploy AI if they don't know how they could be, or if they could be litigated later as a result of it suddenly falling out of a kind of regulatory boundary. So regulation can help innovation because now you know the framework that you can work within. And then for consumers, you feel safe adopting these technologies because you know that somebody has at least reviewed the manual before you kind of go live to air with them. And I think the faster we can get going and recognize that we have to make some room for adaptive regulatory markets because things are going to evolve over time, I think that that's an advantage. And I think the faster we can get going with regulation, the faster we can get it out of the way and it not be the main conversation that's happening in Canada, right? I think, Canadians, that there's so much more to AI than just how we regulate it. We also need to adopt it and be using it and be leading the technology, a lot of it which came from University of Toronto. But if the only thing we can, we center around is regulation, that's really going to hinder Canada's ability to take this technology and run with it.
Well, I definitely want to talk more about the opportunity in front of us, but I do have one just really quick follow-up, and I think you touched on it there. When you think about the history of Canada, I've heard you say before that, the AI story has Canadian roots, and I think we've heard of all of the different people and the players who are important to that journey, but maybe you could just set the scene for the audience today before we get into, again, those opportunities about why this is a Canadian story in so many ways.
Yeah, we're all familiar with ChatGPT, and for better or for worse, the technology that has given us, opportunities or a headache for the last 2.5 years. But the foundations of large language models, of everything that we're seeing right now, happened as a result of a breakthrough in 2012 at the University of Toronto, the deep learning breakthrough. And that is probably one of the most important breakthroughs in artificial intelligence in the last 15 years. Everything has been built on top of that. And so you had the deep learning breakthrough with the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton. You had Yoshua Bengio out in Montreal. And so the reason why AI models can more easily interpret our human language is something called natural language processing. Yoshua Bengio in Montreal advanced that. You have Richard Sutton out in Alberta. So there's this thing called reinforcement learning where you can train AI by kind of giving it feedback. Rich Sutton pioneered that out in Alberta. Yoshua Bengio is the most cited AI scientist of all time. So AI is a Canadian story. We are integral to where we are in this moment with this technology, but we have to own that story. We have to flex our muscles around it and insert ourselves in this moment.
So let's assume that at this very moment, we're not going to be able to do anything in the next half an hour about regulation in this country. So let's try to provide some advice for people in the room who want to be able to scale and achieve their dreams and have AI as sort of those tools that can help on that path. I would love to ask you how you're currently using AI in the work that you're doing.
I use AI all the time. Every day. So my work is really research heavy. I'm constantly buried in white papers. So AI is helping me now source those white papers and keep tabs on things that I need to be tracking in the field. A lot of my work can be science heavy. So if a topic is hard for me to understand, I can now send it to an AI and say, break this down in various ways. I'll turn my notes. So if I'm at a summit or at a meeting and I'm taking a lot of notes, I then send those to like a notebook LM and I turn it into a podcast. So as I'm walking to the next meeting, I'm repeating and listening to the notes that I had just taken as one way. I use it as a great editor. So I write a lot, for better or for worse. I find writing very challenging. But I'll give my op-eds to an AI and say, who do you think this is for? And do you think that how do you think they'd interpret it? And what questions would you have for me after this article? So it's kind of closing gaps that I don't see. So I use it in that way. And that's just probably 4 of the 100 ways that I use it all the time. But the more you use it, the more you recognize where it can be used in your line of work. But it's kind of impossible just to ideate on how you could best use it without actually playing around with these tools.
I think that experimentation is critical, right? Like just figuring out how you use it. You mentioned Notebook LM. For people who are watching right now, that is, of course, a Google tool that lets you create conversations that are sort of podcast style between two hosts. And I'm using that right now with my son, who's 15, to help him study for tests in school. So we will upload all of his history notes and then create a 10, 15-minute podcast conversation about World War I or World War II. And then he can learn in these different ways. So how do people get into this mindset of, okay, I have to experiment, I have to try these different tools, what's safe? And as I say that, I'm thinking about DeepSeek as one example, which of course has a whole bunch of issues that have come out over the past few months. So how do you decide what tools are the tools that are safe to use, if I can use that word maybe in quotes?
Oh, that's a really great question. I'd say my recommendation is to maybe stay within, if you're really to stay within the line of tools that you know. I mean, if you work with Google, if you work with Microsoft, all of these companies have AI tools. You're hearing about ChatGPT a lot for a reason, because it's one of the most widely adopted large language model tools. It's less about the safety and it's more about what you share with AI. So I wouldn't share anything that's super private. I know some people upload their medical records, and I get why they do that, because you're waiting 6 weeks to hear a response about something. I wouldn't upload anything that's super sensitive, like your address or company data, and that's happening at record rates. So I think it's more about how you use it and what you don't share with it. I think if you wouldn't post it on Facebook, you maybe shouldn't send it to an AI system. Or just know that it's going to probably get uploaded and the AI model will get further refined on it. But what that does mean is I send AI systems my bio all the time, because if that's going to be the future of search and where people find out about things, you want to start to feed the models with the things you want the world to know. So if you're a brand, how you can be refining these models on your branding material, marketing, your products, you have to make sure that they're getting exposure to it. And even your website, assuming that AI will be kind of scraping it, and then people will be asking AI systems for advice on those products. So I think just kind of start. I would be a little bit weary of DeepSeek, but other than that, I think it's more about how you use the models.
I recently I interviewed a documentary filmmaker just a couple of weeks ago, and he teaches a course on using AI to make films. And it was really fascinating chatting with him, because I think he had the same experience that maybe you and I are talking about, where it's a situation where you have to sort of go on that journey yourself and start trying new things. For him, for example, it's not to replace the footage that he's shooting, but it is to do things like get transcriptions of what he has shot, look for those emotional moments in the transcriptions, and then he'll go and use that part of some of that video. So you have to kind of start to go down that path. Do you think that in the creative industry we're embracing AI quickly enough, or do you think we have lots of runway in terms of how it's integrated into different jobs and industries as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Is the creative industry embracing it enough? Mm-hmm. I think it is still quite early in the game. I think because of how AI companies have gone about building the tools, and there's a big feeling of like betrayal and just all of that that's happened with the data. It has also unfortunately made probably creatives more reluctant to engage with tools where their work has also probably been scraped to train it. So I really get that, that kind of unfair relationship that's happening there. Outside of that, historically speaking, creatives have been the first to really adopt. I mean, what creatives tend to do, whether it was leading us to the radio, or the invention of Pixar turning computers into something very inspirational and creative, that tends to happen in kind of quiet corners of the world, and we don't hear about it because creatives can work without needing a direct ROI. They can think differently and they can just get inspired. And so it's creativity with these new tools. It just suddenly surfaces. Right? Pixar suddenly came out of nowhere with the computer. So I think that that's what's going to happen with AI. And so if you are a creator and you haven't, or creative and you haven't yet kind of started to sample with these tools, I would say to start, everything about your work that doesn't inspire you, you can probably offload that. If there's a part of your work that really brings you the inspiration, that's probably sacred to you, and that is your superpower. That is what an AI can't do or what your competitors can't do. But the parts of your work that don't inspire you, give that to a robot.
Yeah, and there's so many examples of that. I know in our business where we do podcast production, for example, and we're shooting videos all the time, is that we use Opus Clip to be able to create short vertical videos, and it'll do like a batch of 10 to 20 in a couple of minutes. That typically would take someone maybe 3 days to be able to go through and edit all of that. So that's an example of a job that I don't think anyone enjoyed in the first place. So it can be outsourced to those robots, so to speak. You know, some people may hear that and think, oh my gosh, my job is at risk. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I actually think there isn't a job that isn't going to be impacted by artificial intelligence. I cannot find one in any sector. So how quickly AI might disrupt your specific role or your specific industry, that does vary. But I don't think there's a job that isn't going to change because of how general purpose this technology is. So I think we all have to expect our role to change and have the humility to know maybe by 2030, 60% of what I do is different. And that's not unique to you or me or somebody over there. That's all of us. And I have that same conversation, whether I was in a law firm last week or, financial advisory firm, it's the same. All of us have to expect some change in what we do. And once we kind of get over that, and change sucks, nobody really likes it. I even think about my job and I'm like, wow, I'm going to have to keep learning every year. But that is the only thing that we can guarantee about the future, is that we're going to have to continue to evolve and continue to learn. And it's not even just to keep pace with the future. It's also what we've always done, but it's just kind of getting compressed in these time scales as AI and new technologies continue to change and advance the frontier.
I'm kind of skeptical that AI will save us time. I think it will just allow us to be more competitive and be able to maybe amplify what we're doing. But what do you think about that sort of promise that some people have, that AI will make us be able to, again, have a little bit more time in our days? It will ease up on the demands of humans. How do you wrap your head around that piece?
I know it's funny because we are technically we have digital technologies everywhere, and we've also never been busier. I'm tempted to just unsubscribe from my entire calendar and never talk to it again. But I think on the aggregate, we technically do work less, right? So prior to unions and labor laws going into effect, we were working 7 days a week. Now the average person usually works around 5. We are starting to see half-day Fridays. So I think on the whole, the structural form of the workforce will change shape. And on the whole, we will have different expectations of work. So it's even if we work on weekends because we're always reachable, we still know that we probably shouldn't. And someone would say, I'm sorry to send you this email so late, but. So the structure of the workforce will change. And I think we will over time work less. But what we do in each moment, it might not feel less stressful. The same way now we're just so reachable and there's so many more things to be doing. Like, do you understand social media? Are you launching this business? There's just so much more to be doing. So there's more opportunity, which means we're busier. But overall, in the aggregate, I think things could look different.
We're also coming into this challenging time where we're going to be working alongside not just chatbots, but agents potentially, maybe a team of agents that will go out and do certain jobs for us. When I hear people talk about agents, it's exciting because I think, oh my gosh, they can take and do some of that, really those mundane tasks. But what I worry about a little bit is, where's the line? And what I mean by that is, we've heard from some tech leaders as of late saying AI can be your friend and replace some of those human interactions. Like, where is the line between us saying like AI is your colleague, AI is your friend? Like, what do we have to be careful of at this moment in time?
Oh, goodness. I think this would be an entirely new talk. I'm very, very skeptical, and I'm sure you've seen my posts and my commentary on the friendship thing. I do think AI will be able to support us emotionally, and in some ways seem in some very limited fashion kind of like a companion. But we have to draw a clear line, I think, at emotional dependency, because the more emotionally dependent you are on something, the more vulnerable you are to that. Whether that's another person, whether that's something toxic, all of those avenues kind of a recipe for manipulation and things to go wrong. So I think we don't want to become emotionally dependent on AI because we've outsourced and become so addicted, and that's all we kind of interact with. And then with a colleague too, I do think we're going to have societies of intelligences where you will be working alongside these systems. But I think that means we have to be more intentional about how we connect humans in the workplace, so you don't feel like your entire day is just spent with R2D2s. I don't think that's inspiring for anyone. But yeah, I think we have to draw that line when it comes to addiction, when it comes to thinking that these things are more than they are, and our tendency to anthropomorphize them. And that's going to be really, really high.
So I think we've done a pretty good job of talking about how some of these tools will be able to enhance what we do, augment what we do. But throughout that process, and I think this builds on the last question, when you think about the role of humans, what are some things that will still need humans to be doing in terms of work in the creative industry? Like, where can we spend time honing some of those human skills?
Yeah, I mean, I think taste is such a huge thing, and being inspired. Like, sure, I could now use AI to try to generate some fashion outfit digitally. I have no idea if that's good, if people would like that, but a designer would. So I think, the skills that you're naturally endowed with when it comes to what makes you good as being a creative, that still stays, but the platform and the tools you use to execute that changes. So I think that's how we have to kind of see it. And then, of course, the new ways that, I mean, if you were a really inspired musician but actually bad at instruments, maybe in the last 20 years you found yourself as a producer like DJ Mustard or any of the songs that we listen to. We're doing that in a computer, so they still have the ear for music, but they're using a different tool to bring it to life. I think that's what's going to happen with AI. And again, we're still in the early days, so there are probably some early adopter creatives using it. But once we see en masse, I think entirely new forms of art and creation will come to be. And you won't have to worry about the average person pretending they're a creator, just like the average person isn't shooting for Vogue, even though we all have iPhones.
So we just have about 10 more minutes for you and me in terms of the conversation, and then we're going to do some Q&A. I know one of the things that I mentioned in the title of this session is how can Canada lead the way? I think we've kind of put the regulation issue to the side, like we hopefully will make some progress there, but it's really more than that, right? Like, how do we actually build the skills to train a nation of people who are AI literate, who can really embrace this technology? Because I think we're a little bit off from that goal right now.
Yeah, I'd say we are definitely a little bit off. I think you have to incentivize training. And again, because change isn't easy, and we can't assume that people will automatically know how to leverage these tools, or that small businesses will just suddenly miraculously know how to apply AI to their small business. So I think making sure you invest in subsidize, whether it's a tax benefit or whatever it is for small businesses, large businesses, to adopt these technologies to train their workforce. That's probably the best point of contact you have to people, is to go through companies, sponsor the training, and make sure that workforce is getting skilled. And then the good thing about Canada is that we have a relatively stable education system. I mean, we are one of the most educated countries in the world. And pretty fair, equal education across the country. That's a really great piece of low-hanging fruit to start to also prepare the next generation for what the world that they'll be stepping into. And then again, I think it's also a brand story. We have to start talking about the Canadian AI brand. What does it mean for Canada to lead in this era? What are the Canadian pain points? I think maybe we all feel we wait a little bit too long for healthcare and things. These are amazing problems for AI to solve. So let's get excited about how it can be uniquely positioned to help our country. I mean, there's a lot that AI can do for us. I just don't think many Canadians have even been told that story.
Are you optimistic that we can tell that story and build that brand?
100%. I really believe Canada is this kind of emerging superpower waiting in the wings. And we have so much of the AI story. There's the research and the software, but then there's the hardware, there's the infrastructure, there's the clean energy, there's the kind of stable politics. All of these things are what's going to drive the winners in the 21st century. And Canada is actually well positioned in every single category. We just need to recognize that. We can put our humility to the side for a second and flex everything we have to offer in this era.
So, just one more question for you, because I'm sure for people, hopefully in the room, who are listening and are thinking, oh my gosh, what a great opportunity we have in front of us as a country, probably a great opportunity in the creative industry, which of course covers so many different jobs and businesses. But what about on the individual level? What piece of advice can we leave people in the room with before we go to questions? If they haven't started down this AI path, they're not really sure, like, where do I begin? What is that starting point that can help?
Yeah, and I think, rest assured, one, you aren't late. I think that's kind of a bit of a panic everybody feels. CEOs have no idea what's happening. They have no idea what they're doing. So you're definitely not late to the game. In terms of just getting started, you can start with just chatting to an AI system and just asking it a question about something completely random. And then you'll start to see how it responds and what else you could engage with it about. Maybe it is kind of making my email sound a little bit more polished, as long as there isn't kind of classified information in those emails. And the more you just start to engage with it, the more you're going to understand what it's capable of, what it's absolutely not. But if you haven't already, my advice would be to jump on any of the popular tools, whether that's a ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, start conversing with these systems. Maybe even watch a few YouTube videos, like how to get the most from AI and like insert your job there. And just start learning, and remember that learning is one of the most important skills in this era. And a lot of us, we don't know how well we learn and how best we learn, but that's something that we all need to be doing and to be flexing, and the muscle that we need to be exercising.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, because it's such great advice, I would say too, don't assume that something that you try to do today with an AI system, you won't be able to do in just a few weeks. And the reason I mention that is that, if you've tried ChatGPT back in 2022 and you thought, I don't really need this, you should try it today, because it's a whole different experience, right? Like, you can design images, you can do so much more. So I think we have to revisit some of these tools regularly, because the capabilities really become pretty phenomenal very quickly too.
I'm so glad you brought that up, actually, because there is also a tendency to ask AI to suddenly do one thing. I have a friend in marketing, and she just asked the AI system to build the plan. And that was it. 3 lines, go build the plan. And we have to have some humility and recognize that there's a bit of a learning curve. So how you prompt an AI, how you get it to work best for you, we have to learn that, right? So it's akin to teaching a child how to do something. You have to kind of go back and forth and give some instruction, and then it can work better for you. But just kind of giving it a huge task and then saying, can you do it? Nope. Okay, AI is a hoax. We have to recognize that we have some learning to do as well.
Thanks, Sinead and Amber. Coming up next, we chat about small business tech tips for Canadian entrepreneurs.
The Amber Mack Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
There are more than 1 million small and medium-sized businesses in Canada, and many are now looking for new ways to grow during a period of economic change and Canadian pride. As a small business owner, here are some homegrown technology, digital tips, and AI tools that I'm using that can help all entrepreneurs thrive. First up, the Asus ExpertBook P5 is the perfect laptop for business owners on the go, which is pretty much everyone these days. Powered by an Intel Core Ultra processor, this device is optimized for all-day battery life and enhanced by AI-driven features such as noise cancellation, automatic camera adjustments, and AI transcriptions for your video calls. Each ExpertBook P5 is also outfitted with business-grade security and military-grade durability, so you're protected during your busy days. Next up, when your website or emails are hosted in Canada, your data is protected by Canadian privacy laws, which are some of the strongest in the world. That's why now, more than ever, it's time to break up with your US hosting provider and switch to a trusted Canadian company like WHC, where you have full control over your digital presence. All hosted on servers in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. When you make this move, you're supporting Canadian tech. And web hosting Canada's data centers are powered by renewable energy, so you're also making a green-friendly choice. Now let's stick with this theme of choosing Canadian tech. If you're running a business that accepts payments, Moneris is a Canadian-owned company supporting businesses of all sizes with flexible commerce solutions such as Moneris Go and Moneris Go Plus. And it's about lots more than just payments. They also have Moneris Go Retail, a scalable retail solution that works with these devices. Business owners can accept payments from customers however those customers want to pay. They can also accept payments wherever they take their business and access real-time reporting data at their fingertips to grow their business. Moneris Go also makes it easy to offer gift cards, installments enabled by Visa, dynamic currency conversion, and other features to empower businesses at all stages as they grow. Now let's talk about RBC and their Starting a Business Guide. Designed to help entrepreneurs manage their finances with ease, the RBC Digital Choice Business Account keeps business and personal finances separate, organized, and tax efficient. For only $6 a month, users get unlimited electronic debit and credit transactions, unlimited electronic check deposits, and more digital tools that can help simplify everyday banking. It's a smart, streamlined solution for small business owners looking to stay focused on growth, not paperwork. RBC also offers an extensive online hub with tools such as a free business plan builder to help entrepreneurs get started with a new business or improve their existing business. Within the hub, you can find more business solutions like Owner, offering a simple way to register or incorporate your business, and 1Password, which is an easy way to secure your business data. RBC also offers expert advice and resources to help entrepreneurs every step of the way. Thank you so much to our partners for supporting this tech tour that we've been doing across the country. And for all of the links, you can head to my website at ambermac.com.
Thanks, Amber. For all those links to different companies, you can visit ambermac.com. Also visit us on YouTube at AmberMac to see video segments for each of our interviews, headlines, and the other Mac. And please subscribe there or on your favorite podcasting platform.
If you're looking for another way to stay on top of the latest tech news, I wanted to remind you that every Tuesday I send out a free email newsletter that will land in your inbox, and it's all about what's happening in technology and more. Each week we dive into what's happening in artificial intelligence. We also do a breakdown in terms of what you need to know about some of the latest threats online. We will dive into all of the apps that are trending online and tell you if they are safe to download, and lots more. We also do regular segments on climate tech and some fun stuff too for those people interested in how to lead on the tech front in a very fast future. Please join our community of 10,000 subscribers. All you have to do is head on over to my website. That's ambermac.com/newsletter, and you can join for free and sign up as we try to navigate our fast future better together. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Please do let us know if you have any suggestions for topics we should cover or guests we should feature. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
You're listening to The Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.